Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching the Today I Found Our YouTube channel, and in the video today we're looking at when men started getting circumcised. Having served variously as a mark of virility, servility, and gentility, circumcision has throughout the centuries worn many symbolic hats. While anthropologists disagree as to the definitive origins of circumcision, the earliest hard evidence comes from the first ancient Egyptian mummies of considerable vintage, around 2300 BC. That being said, Egyptian paintings date circumcision to centuries prior, depicting ritual circumcision as a prerequisite to entering the priesthood. Contention remains as to whether circumcision was a sign of pride rather than prejudice amongst the ancient Egyptians. While popular among the elite, forced circumcision was inflicted on captured Phoenician and Jewish slaves as a badge of dishonor, more practical or rather less lethal than castration. Whatever its initial origins, by 1800 BC, the Jews were practicing circumcision for religious reasons, in deference to God's religious injunction to Abraham as contained in the Torah. Every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. That's from Genesis. Though the religious reasons have remained ostensibly the same for thousands of years, the procedure has changed rather sharply. The original practice, milah, was abbreviated to only the removal of the tip of the foreskin. The decision to snip beyond the tip lay in the cultural collision between Greco-Roman and Jewish cultures. While the Jews considered circumcision among matters theistic, the Greeks regarded it as an aesthetic faux pas. As Hellenic culture became the fashion throughout the Roman Empire, Jews seeking to avoid discrimination and compete in Roman games sought to emulate their hosts by stretching the foreskin and tying it closed. However, Jewish elders, rather unsympathetic to the when in Rome justification of the blasphemous procedure, instated the Brit Peria around 140 AD. With this, the circumcision procedure now included removing the foreskin to beyond the ridge of the glans, ensuring all Jews would be fully shorn of Roman identity. With circumcision having assumed a distinctly Jewish connotation, it became grounds for anti-Semitic discrimination. History is littered with examples such as the Seleucid king Antiochus occupying Jerusalem in 169 BC, who made the Brit Pariah punishable by death. The Roman author Suetonius records court proceedings wherein a 90-year-old man, suspected of evading the Jewish tax, was stripped naked for what must have been the Roman take on strict scrutiny. After 50 BC, circumcision remained, at least popularly speaking, a largely Jewish affair until controversy ignited among early Christians. It was unclear whether the gospel required circumcision among converts, which would thus restrict Christianity to Jews or Gentiles waiting to undergo the procedure. Ultimately, it was decided that circumcision was not a prerequisite to conversion, and the Catholic Church maintained a degree of hostility towards the practice, which would set the tone for circumcision until the 19th century. The Greco-Roman aversion towards circumcision, once heavily salted with anti-Semitism, persisted long after unruly Gauls had overrun the empire. Indeed, by the time Britain had matured to imperial status, explorers who had been busily exporting British commerce and colonialism returned with salacious tales about the barbaric tribes that lay at the extremities of the empire and the varieties of circumcision practiced within. Sir Richard Burton wrote of one such procedure that tears off the epidermis from the cuts around the groin and flays the testicles and penis, ending with amputation of the foreskin. Certain Islamic peoples, such as those of the Mughal Empire, introduced the British to circumcision in a rather more unceremonious fashion, claiming the foreskins of vanquished British troops willy-nilly on the battlefield. Despite the initial close shaves between the British and other cultures, they eventually spearheaded a change in attitude about circumcision. Partially inspired by a sense of cultural cosmopolitanism or fear of troops losing their heads under threat of battlefield circumcision, the British began a revival of circumcision. The social and hygienic values of circumcision were well entrenched during the Victorian era, with British royalty beginning a practice of circumcising their heirs, the peerage following suit, and the change in attitudes radiating downwards through British society and the empire. This is not to say that the religious element of circumcision subsided. Indeed, during both world wars, the political and racial subtext of circumcision re-emerged with bloody consequence. Forced circumcision accompanied the massacre of Armenians under the Ottoman Empire, while circumcision served again as a potentially lethal marker of Jewish identity under Nazi Germany. In the present day, however, racial and class controversies regarding circumcision have cooled. Nonetheless, the demographic patterns and medical consensus regarding circumcision have remained far from settled. The size of the circumcised British population has dropped by about 30% from its heyday to roughly 4% today. The United States has remained steady, with over half of the male population circumcised, and Israel has, unsurprisingly, become the circumcision capital of the world, with a nearly 100% circumcision rate. Even with largely circumcised populations, health debates rage. Critics of circumcision cite an absence of evidence vis-à-vis the supposed health benefits of circumcision and list a litany of disadvantages such as pain to the child, infection, urinary complications, enhanced risk of disease, and in extremely rare cases, even death from complications due to the circumcision. 1 in about 50,000, or 8 babies every year in the US, die as a result of this procedure. Defenders of the practice, which includes the American Academy of Pediatrics, however, claim that the supposed health benefits outweigh the risks to the minority. They cite greater immunity from sexually transmitted diseases and genital cancer, as well as the avoidance of certain general hygiene problems. Despite the cut and thrust of circumcision politics, male circumcision will almost certainly remain a point of pride and tradition among certain groups, primarily for religious reasons, but also on a much lesser scale for aesthetic reasons. This was a viewpoint humorously represented by the character of Ellen on Seinfeld when she said of seeing an uncircumcised penis,
"It had no face, no personality. It was like a Martian."
So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do give us a like below and don't forget to subscribe. Also, over there on the right are a couple of other videos you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.